All right, let's roll here. Thank you all for being here. Very disappointed. I said this after the game, so I won't get into a whole bunch of repeat, but very disappointed how we played on Saturday. Credit to Oklahoma. We caught them at the wrong time. They were juiced. We got their best. That's as good as they played. They were ready to go, and we weren't, and they got after us, and it was not pretty. And so special teams was really the only bright side we had. We challenged really our core group of players, and I thought they really responded. Best we played on special teams. Won the field position battle, but on offense and defense, we didn't coach good enough. Fundamentally, we weren't good enough, and our execution just sorely lacked in that game. They soundly beat us up front. The strength of our football team's up front, and they really they did some things moving their defensive line that negated some things we did in the run game early. Got some penetration that nobody else really has. And then their O-line did a nice job. They got movement, and I thought their backs did a nice job too. Quick recap: special teams wise, again, mostly positive there. Our kickoff returns, the best we've played. Had two really nice returns there. We blocked much better. Our punt team forced a takeaway. I think it's the second or third we've had this year, and then Ollie bounced back. Didn't punt it very good versus BYU. Came back and had a really good day on Saturday, and our coverage was really good. And I thought our kickoff team was much better. Mike gave us a chance and made a couple changes on there, and I thought we're much improved there. Would have liked to make that field goal. We missed a field goal. Didn't have a great hold on that. And then we had a missed opportunity there on punt return. We really had everybody blocked but one, and that was early in the game where we could have, it could have helped us. But going to defense, just not good enough. We really didn't come close to slowing them down. Gabriel had all the time. Tried to put some pressure on him. It didn't work. They picked it up. Several different types of coverages. We didn't even slow them down. I think the stats say it all. I don't have to really go into much detail on that. Y'all can read the stat sheet. So third downs were critical. Early in the game, while it was still a game, we got them into third downs, and then they converted every one of them. And too many explosive plays and just not good enough. Didn't put our kids into good enough spots. We didn't play very aggressive. Once they started hitting us, just disappointed how we played there. Offensively, had a great opening drive, and then really come up empty on the next 5 possessions. And first time we've really struggled in a long time. Our best players weren't good enough in the game. Goal line stand. It was really bad ball. Not a very good call on my part on the fourth down. I thought we scored on first down. I feel even stronger that we scored on first down after watching it on tape. And then really not pleased with how we played after the initial touchdown the second half. We scored on opening drive of the second half as well. And then I didn't think we played very well. Garrett's decision-making was poor. He was inaccurate. But he settled down, kind of late in the second quarter and was better. And then our O-line, I talked about it. They're the strength of our team, and they just didn't play. We didn't play well enough up front, and so that's kind of the story there. Again, very disappointed. Changed up our schedule. We practiced yesterday, and the point being just to flush that game. It's not one of those things where we don't show the kids. I know some people talk about that, but that never really makes sense to me. Is because when you get exposed in certain areas, you better prepare for it because your next opponents, your 2 regular season and your bowl opponent are going to watch that. And so you better correct it. And so we brought them in yesterday. We practiced. We put that game to rest and cleaned up the mistakes. And we'll start afresh in the morning. Today was their day off. We'll start afresh in the morning on Cincinnati. And moving on there, I think that obviously a former Big East foe. I think this is a game that it should kind of grow into a rivalry. It's obviously the closest proximity school in the Big 12 to us. And I think this is a game that both fan bases, as time goes on, this has an opportunity to grow into a rivalry game. It's a good win on the road for them last week. I think that was the best they've played, and I think they'll have some confidence rolling in here. know Coach Satterfield very well. We had several matchups in the Sun Belt. Really good offensive mind. He's kept his core group of coaches together for a long time. They do a nice job. If you just looked at the stats, like one of the first things I do when you kind of turn the page to a new opponent is you look at the stats. And, if you just looked at the stats and didn't look at the win-loss record, they're a team that's one of the top rushing teams in the whole conference. They're defensively, they stop the run at a high rate. And then you look at their win-loss record, and they've won three games and one league game. It really kind of a weird makeup. And they've been in almost all their games. Lost some close ones, but they did play their best against Houston down on the road. And a team that we have a great deal of respect for. So you talk about them on special teams. They've got an Australian punter. He's very good. He's 6'7", big, long guy. He's got a bunch of punts inside the 15-yard line. Their field goal kicker's been very good. Offensively, it starts with their rushing attack. And if you look at what Sat's done since he's been a coordinator or head coach, really everything they do is built off the outside zone. They were really one of the early people that ran the outside zone, really committed to it, and he's continued to do that. At Louisville, now here at Cincinnati, they've always ran the ball well, and they've got the nakeds and the play actions off of that. Their O-line does a really nice job. Quarterback's dual threat. They're playing two now, but both of them can do. The Jones kid's really fast. He breaks tackles. The running back, we know well. He's originally from Cincinnati. We tried to recruit him out of high school. I think he went to LSU originally. Now he came back home to Cincinnati. He's tough, really physical runner. Breaks a lot of tackles. He's one of the guys in the country with the most broken tackles. And they got several receivers, and they've got a couple big guys that can run, and then they've got a little slot that they get the ball to a bunch of different ways. Defensively, if you look again. Statistically, they're close to the top in almost every stat category, maybe outside a couple in our league. If you look at league games, and three-man front, I think starts with the D line. They have the best interior D lineman in our conference. He's special, and Corleone, he's from Cincinnati there, and man, we're going to have to really know where he's at. And he's a disruptor. He's one of those guys, if you didn't have to play against him, you really appreciate how he plays. But he's difficult to run against, and he generates pressure. And I think the strength of their defense is up front. Their D-line's really good. They do a lot of different slants and pressures to switch up the looks, mix up their coverages. But huge challenge, and I have zero doubt that our guys will bounce back. It's been a resilient group all year. We'll bounce back. We'll play well on Saturday and finish strong here at home. Last home game and senior day, and probably the most important thing on Saturday is honoring Coach Nealon and getting in. I don't even know what we call it. I know it's what do we say? What are we using? What term are we using, Monty? Immortalized. There you go. But I always say Ring of Honor. We don't really have that, but if you get your name put in the stadium permanently, that's a pretty damn big deal. So, but we're gonna honor him, and I hope we have a big turnout. I know our fan base really appreciates him, and I hope we have a bunch of people show up, and he can feel that when he gets announced during the break in action there, and I know some of his former players are coming back to an event on Friday, so it really should be a weekend about celebrating him, and I look forward to that, and look forward to getting back on the field and just redeeming ourselves, because we played a lot better football than we put out there on Saturday. So, with that, questions.
Neal, so you said immediately after the game about as bad as you can remember your passing game being. As you watch film and you break that down, I mean, obviously you talk a little bit about Garrett and his struggle, but all Garrett receivers problem?
Well, we dropped. Yeah, Greg, we probably dropped 5. One running back drop, 4 on the wideouts. So that would have got us to 15 to 31. So I think when you look at it, we had those drops, which, outside of CJ having a couple versus BYU, we really had that issue. It wasn't a case where we had guys open in the game. I think the deeper question is, and we've had guys open, in the games we struggled, because that's what you first of all look when you're evaluating it. Okay, all right, we talked about Garrett's fundamental issues, and And there's some of these things that are repeated, and he knows this. He's going to have to get them corrected, or he's going to be a 50% passer, and that's not good enough. So he's got to get those things corrected. And there's some of this, and they're really the same mistakes that he made versus BYU and got away with it, but didn't get away with it versus Oklahoma. So you see that from a fundamental perspective. Obviously, the drop's got to get corrected. Then you go, okay, schematically, are we getting people open? Because if the people aren't open, that's not Garrett's fault. That's not the receiver's fault. That's my fault. But we had people open. So I think the next question is you look at it from a coaching perspective, are we running the right plays that he can see? You know, are they the best plays for him? And then are we getting enough repetition on these plays we're running? And so that's kind of what I've been doing for the last last several hours, is going through and say, okay, all right, hey, here's what he's really good at. You know, this is what we need to do. We need to kind of, we need to thin down what we're doing from a pass game perspective, which we've already thinned down quite a bit, but we need to even thin down even more. All right. And then we need to get really good at these plays on Tuesday and Wednesday and try to give every look we possibly can to these small pass plays. And so that's what we're doing. And, I really feel like, he knows, Garrett knows, and I think that he'll be better, and we'll give him a better chance on Saturday.
I guess, because obviously you even mentioned after the game that you're kind of surprised by the poor play, just for how well your team had been playing, things like that. And then now saying that the team will bounce back because they've done it earlier. Just any message to fans on why you feel that way and why they should believe that? Just because this has been a better season than last year, obviously, but those games where you don't think that the play is good enough still are happening.
Well, I would say that if you looked at the body of work, that would be the only outlier. We didn't play very well defensively versus Houston, and we didn't play very well defensively in the fourth quarter versus Oklahoma State. But if you were going to talk about good football compared to bad football, those would be, some examples of bad football. But that's the only game where that's really occurred. I think it's too is like, and I don't know if I did a good enough job of this after the game because I was pretty heated. But you also got to give Oklahoma some credit too. There's a reason why year in and year out they're in the top 10 in the country in recruiting. They got good players. They had a chip on their shoulder because they'd lost 2 games. Their fan base on their tail, and they came out with their backs against the wall and played their best game of the year. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't give some credit to them because they deserve it. Now, with that being said, is we didn't play well enough, and they're not that much better than us, and that's a game that we should have for sure been competitive in and with an opportunity to win the game in the fourth quarter. Now, whether we were good enough or not, we'll never know because we didn't play good enough to give ourselves a chance. But that's what I would say to you.
With Coach Neal being honored this weekend, the seniors also going to be honored. Is this a senior day situation?
We will.
And has that lost something with the way football is gone?
Yeah, I think just in general, it probably has. Because not in the too distant past, you'd had guys that were here 4, 5, 6 years, and we still have some of those, but you don't have as many. I think the biggest thing that's changed for me as a coach is like, and some of this is due to it's really a lot of it's due to the COVID year. You don't know who's walking and who's not. I don't really make a big deal about it. And so it's kind of up to the guys whether they want to walk or not. The guys that have eligibility left, the guys that don't have eligibility, they're for sure walk. But guys that have a year of eligibility left, it's kind of up to them, and we'll leave it to that. I think that senior day is always a tough emotional day. I would if it was up to me, I would probably do what some of these high schools and middle schools and things like that have done, where they started honoring their 8th grade and their high school seniors like on the first game, and because I think it takes some of the emotions out of it. But it's hard, like especially these guys that have been in this program and that are from this state that it really means something to. That you talking about, because football is a game of passion, and you're talking about just before the snap of the ball, you're put in a mental frame where you got to really think about. There's a lot going through your mind, and And so I think you have to prepare your guys for that, and they got to be able to kind of think through and visualize and be able to think through how they're going to handle that as they go through the week. But it is what it is. It's one of those things that we've always done, and our guys they'll figure it out and we'll handle it.
Cincinnati doing tempo?
They'll do a little bit. That's not who they are, but they'll do a little bit. We'll see how CJ and Doug. They didn't practice yesterday, but we'll see how they do as we move later in the week. Probably have a better, when Tony and I do the radio show on Thursday, I'll probably have a better answer for you. Everybody else that played, hurt feelings. Does that count? Got a lot of hurt feelings, but I think we're pretty healthy.
What do you think happened with the offensive line? Like, how would you evaluate?
I have high expectations, and we still ran the ball for 176 yards. We didn't give up a sack, so it wasn't like, they just weren't dominant. And I think it's one of those things too. I think Oklahoma, their D-line got up for it, and Brent did a few different things than he had done in previous games. It took us a little while to settle down. It wasn't that we played poorly, and honestly, most teams would probably take 176 yards, no sacks versus Oklahoma. But for us, at the standard that we're kind of setting and how we play up front, it wasn't up to our standards or up to our expectations. And so I thought it took us a little while to settle down, and then we lost some fundamentals when they did some things that we hadn't seen on video.
Third and long was kind of their deal. Did that kind of play into that with the way things transpired in the game?
You talking about us on offense or them on offense?
Third and long defense, that's where they really made hay.
Yeah, they did. And really, I think it goes back to, I think most teams' plans versus us are going to try to get us. And so I think if you were asking, I don't know if the third downs had as big a factor, because if you told me we were going to be in a bunch of third and longs, I would have told you we were going to struggle. And so I think more, their success was due on their early down success, especially if you look at first down runs. They did a nice job there. And then we missed some easy completions on some first downs that got us into some bad situations also.
You started the last couple games pretty well offensively, and then the two prior ones sustained it. And just obviously the exception would be last game. Anything that you can pinpoint there? You've explained some of them, but something that was just you watched and said, "Man, not today."
Well, so the second drive, when you go back and look at it, we had two really good plays. And so the first one, or the first play of the second series, we did a handoff to Rodney. And we had everybody blocked, and the running back just slipped off late and ended up being a 5-yard gain. So it was going to be, and I may have been 6, you know what I mean? But it was going to be ballpark 2nd and 5. And then we jump off sides, and then it gets into 2nd and 10. And then we fall down on the backside of an outside zone, and it ends up being 3rd and 9. And that's the one where we scrambled, and Devin Carter's wide open up the seam, and Garrett doesn't see him. And so, it's one of those things that's unfortunate. We had some plays, and we kind of got in our own way. Now after that, the next really 2 series, the one that's really frustrating is the 3rd series where we punt and we have the turnover, and we just didn't make very good decisions, and that's the drive to me. Like, if we turn that into points, then I really think it's a ball game. Even if it's a higher scoring affair, it's going to be a game, right? And when we don't turn that into points, they immediately score, and then it went from there. But I think going back to kind of the same thing I was telling John is really offensively is some decision making and some early success they had on drive starters, and then on first downs.
A lot of that scripted stuff, you're kind of feeling things out to see what works and playing stuff for later on. And again, prior 2 games, fine. Second game, that second drive you just mentioned, third drive, how much does it change when it doesn't work and you can't plant the stuff or you can't develop it? Or do you even abandon it and just keep going and hope to eventually get it?
No, I think you have to change. So, like, if you look at what we did in that game right there is we were trying to get some perimeter stuff early in the game where it took out. I knew they were going to kind of try to junk up our run game, right? And so what we were trying to do early in that is trying to get on the perimeter and have some success on the perimeter where they had to play more people outside the tackles. And we had some good hits on that. And then we got into it, and just like when any pretty good offense struggles, it ends up being where it's just a guy here and a guy there. And it's usually now if you're bad on offense, it's usually there's a lot of issues. But when you got a unit that's pretty good, it's usually when things aren't working exactly the way they should, it's usually 1 out of 11 or 2 out of 11. That's what we had. We had some guys that got cross-faced up front where we had them blocked up pretty well, and we got cross-faced, and we had to make a cut sooner than later. But after we struggled there, we kind of went back, and we got into some 12 personnel, and it settled them down some, and we had some success with that. But, yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm kind of talking you through the game, but I don't know if I'm really – am I answering your question?
They're not the same, but I just imagine you didn't score the first drive and say, okay, let's put that on the shelf and do something different. But when the game is going in a certain direction, how hard is it to get it back on your side?
Well, it's hard when they're scoring, right? And so because we had to throw the ball probably a little bit more in that second quarter than we wanted to because it was getting away from us, right? And we went for that 4th and 2 because it was 17-7, and you can feel it hey, if we have to punt here, we're going to punt it back, and they're going to go down. It's going to be this one's going to get away from us, right? And then when we didn't convert, then we're going to have to throw it to get back into it, and we had to throw a little bit more than we probably wanted to.
The things that OU did to you that gave you issues, are those things specific to what they do, or are those things that you have to prepare for the final two
No,
games?
I think this is a copycat deal, and so the things that they did, like Cincinnati can get into very easily, Baylor can get into very easily. And they're things that we've handled earlier in the year. They didn't do anything that was. It was a little bit different for them, and so But yes, that's what we worked yesterday. And we'll work it all week because the things that from a front standpoint and some of the stunts and blitzes they did, absolutely, we'll see them again on this Saturday, next Saturday as well.
Did you say anything to Wilson or anybody about how emotions almost got the better of the
Yeah,
team?
that wasn't smart. Yeah, and Brent and I talked about it after the game. That's neither their group or in our group. We haven't done that. I don't really know where that came from. The hit was clean in the end zone there. Anthony shouldn't stood over him. He should have got out of the way. And then they came out and they shouldn't have done what they've done. And unfortunate, but yeah, we got it cleaned up.
How do you, in football, how do you explain the day that the running back of Oklahoma State had against you guys, the way you played against Central Florida, what Central Florida did to them,
Yeah.
Houston situation? How do you explain that?
Well, I don't know if you can, right? I mean, it's misery loves company, right? So I'm sitting there looking on as we're getting back at 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. I'm sitting there looking at scores, and we're not the only team that got ran off the field on Saturday. Ole Miss did, and Oklahoma State did, and there's several other ones, but just a couple off the top of my head. And I think it goes back to this: is you're dealing, and the truth of the matter is you're dealing with 17 to 23 ballpark 17, 23-year-olds. You're also dealing with some different things that the common person doesn't understand and what I mean by that is travels plays into it, being home or away plays into it, and there's not a whole lot of difference outside a few teams. And what I mean by that, there's some clear cream in Power 5 right now, and there's some clear bottom. But there's a whole lot of teams that are very similar. And so if you have an injury or if one of your key players is off, it could be something going on off the field. It could be something injury. If they're a little bit off, then it's a different group, and then matchups are so critical. Some teams like Houston, their receivers were a really tough match for us. So I knew going into that game You know, even though, you know, our record was better than them, I knew it was going to be a tough matchup, right? And those happen. Those happen in college football. You know, Central Florida and Oklahoma State. Central Florida does some things in the run game that were going to make it difficult for Oklahoma State. You know, and then the rain came. You know, nobody talks about it. It was raining sideways when I turned it on the second quarter, and so there's just a whole lot of different factors than in professional sports. And I know that's a long answer, but I hope that made sense to you.
Program put a very high premium on honoring Coach Neal and what he's meant to the program. What has he meant to you?
Well, he's been great to me. You know, he really has. He's been great to me. He's talked to our team a bunch, you know, through the years. He's been very supportive, and that's really all I can ask. You know, I have a great deal of respect for him as a coach and a man. You know, he did it for a long time here. He did it the right way, and I'm glad. I really feel, and I hope my feeling on this, because I'm not necessarily just connected all the time, but I really feel like the longer he's been away, the more appreciation our fan base has for him, and as well they should. You know, he did it really well for a long time, but he's been great to me, very supportive. All right, thank y'all.